Hello, Chick Chang back with another video, part 2 of Halo Flood, or again as some may know, Halo Combat Evolved. We left off with John getting back to Alpha Base after rescuing Keyes from the Truth and Reconciliation, and Lieutenant McKay was about to change the tide of power on the surface of Halo. Without further delay, let's begin. Lieutenant McKay and her team is in the rocks, where they snuck through darkness and rainfall to get to, setting up 3 teams to storm the Pillar of Autumn. Banshees on lock from M19 launchers and 3 Marines to each Ghost on the ground. They opened fire, destroying the Banshees and moving in on the destroyed Ghosts. McKay got all her Helljumpers to sprint for the Autumn when one of her snipers was plasmaed by a Covenant dropship. She ordered them to turn and open fire on the Covenant soldiers, dropping out and killed most of them. They reached their goal and were prepping for the second phase of the mission. Meanwhile at Alpha Base, Captain Keyes had finally got some rest. Not much, but more than he had had recently. When awake, Silva met with him and Keyes congratulated him for taking the Butte. What him and his Helljumpers were able to accomplish was spectacular. Keyes then tells him about what he had learned on the Covenant ship, and that he had sent John and Cortana to find the command center of the ring, because if the Halo was a weapon, they really needed to be the ones to take it over. Silva was a bit taken aback since Keyes had so easily taken back command, even though it was literally what he was supposed to do. He asks Keyes if the mission John is on is one that only one person should take, but Keyes tells him that John has advantages over the ODSTs, one being Cortana, and that him being on the mission frees up his ODSTs to do other things, and with so much to do, it makes more sense that way. Silva also brought up how the Spartan project was a failure again, and basically just does the same thing that he had told John. And he actually brings up the reason why he hates the Spartan project so much. He mentions the time where John was confronted by 4 ODSTs that were set up to have an issue with him by higher ups. John beat the crap out of them, killing 2 of them, which explains why Silva has so many issues with the Master Chief. But Keyes tells him that John isn't who he is because of the augmentations. He would have been a great human being even without the Spartan program. Even brings up his mission he had a while back while flying around with Dr. Halsey for her program, and admitted that if he had known what was going on, he would have resigned. Also while stating that no children should ever be indoctrinated into the military during normal times, these were not normal times. Human extinction was on the line. Silver agreed reluctantly and said that they'd do whatever they could to help John on his mission. Which, speaking of him, he's riding along with some other Marines on Echo 419 to try and get to the command center of the ring. 2 UNSC dropships arrive on the beach and drop off Marines and the Spartan while engaging the Covenant troops there. The Marines outnumbered the Covenant for once and made quick work of them. Then Foehammer dropped off a Warthog for them, and John and 2 other Marines jumped in and drove to the designated target. Once there, John cleared out a few grunts and jackals, hopped back in the Warthog, and drove in so they could clear out the rest. John jumped out and into the structure and moved down the ramps inside. After clearing out more Covenant with a grenade and bursts from his assault rifle, he gets to the door that is shut and locked. Cortana radios Keyes and tells him that, and he says to figure a way out because they cannot fail. So they hike their way back up to the Warthog and headed to the beach. John sees a path that seems to go to the center of the island, so he dismounts the vehicle and follows the path, any Covenant in the way until reaching the structure. Unbeknownst to him, Zuka Zamami is chilling in the structure with a team of grunts and a couple of hunters, waiting for their chance to kill the Spartan. However, for them, the Master Chief seems to sense them. When the hunter lashes out, John is able to fend it off. A panicked grunt fires a plasma charge and shot the back of the second hunter and killing him by accident. And then that grunt is killed by the Spartan. Yayep tries to crawl behind a wall and hide, but Zamami grabs him and tells him to keep quiet so they can live to fight another day. John, still in a bit of shock, eyes darting back and forth, wondering what else is hiding within the structure. Another thing about this part is that Zamami was unable to even fire a shot because one hunter was in line of sight and the other bumped into him, slamming him to the floor during the fight. So he didn't really have a chance to do anything. In the end, John and Cortana are able to unlock the door and are now looking for the silent cartographer and the map to the control room. Lieutenant McKay and her Helljumpers are taking back the Pillar of Autumn, or at least the decks that they need to. Once all cleared, they separate into 3 groups, one being McKay's group with 15 Warthogs, 5 without trailers so they can deal with ground forces. Second being 2nd Lieutenant Oros with the rest of the Warthogs on air defense duty, and Master Sergeant Lister in command of 4 Scorpion tanks. They set up in formation, Warthogs around the tanks to protect them from any ground threats, and they move out on their way back to Alpha Base. Along the way, McKay has to make a choice. One direction goes down a narrow path of hills and gullies, which would cause them to have to go down a single file line, which is obviously a terrible idea. Or take a half-kilometer wide path where they could enter in formation, but there are big hills on either side and a big hill beyond. Also not a great idea, but it's less of a problem. So McKay decides to tackle the obvious route, and they are on their way. The Covenant happened to be lying in wait. Ado Mortumi, a Covenant spy, was on Second Hill with Field Master Noga Putumi, wondering who the spy was and what he was there to do. to watch him or the enemy. Mortemy tells him the enemy, but really it was both. When the humans got closer, Putumi ordered the Banshees to start attacking. After many Banshees had been eliminated, ghosts were sent in, which were also dealt with. Warthogs here and there were destroyed, but for the most part the formation remained strong and were pushing through. Oros' squad dealing with the Banshees, and McKay fought off the ghosts. Lister had the tanks firing on the Wraiths that started opening fire on them. They had finally destroyed one with the last volley before they were out of line of sight, which was good, but at that point the Wraiths were pretty much going to have to stop firing anyway to avoid killing their own. Third Hill didn't fare much better for the Covenant, getting blasted by tanks, and therefore they let the humans make it through. The spy Mortemy told Fieldmaster Putumi that the report would write itself, and if he had units formed in the valley instead of up on the hills, maybe he would have won the battle. Which, you know, hindsight 2020, right? Lance Corporal Snaky Jones survived a crash in a Warthog but lost his helmet in the act. Then made it to the thankfully still intact vehicle to retrieve his sniper rifle, along with food and water to keep alive, while he was able to hoof it back to Alpha Base, since without comms, he wasn't radioing a ride anytime soon. He climbed the hill nearby to get a better vantage point on the hill so he could take out any high-value targets. Fortunately for the Fieldmaster, Snaky Jones killed the spy for him, while being able to avoid getting shot himself, and had Banshees going after the sniper's position, so he could make the report himself instead. Lieutenant Oros had a few volunteers with her hideout in the rocks to lure Banshees to them. With launchers, they destroyed most of them, while the others fled. However, there was one pilot whose Banshee was going down and sent it straight at Oros, and her team wiping them all out. After passing through security and unlocking the door, John makes it back to the door that was locked in the first place. On their way out of the current structure, they hear that a Pelican is going down and needs help, although it doesn't seem like it's going to last long. On his way out, he was attacked by an elite that was in stealth. However, because he roared before attacking, John is able to react and put him down. He gets back to the surface, heads off to try and help those on board Bravo 22. However, after arriving, he sees that the Pelican had crashed and those on board that survived the crash were killed by the Covenant. The Master Chief decides to scrounge up some ammo, grabs a rocket launcher just in case, and grabs the Warthog, making his way back to the beach. A couple Marines hop in and they make way to the first structure. At the structure, two hunters had heard that a couple hours earlier, from a Sangheili named Zuko Zamami, that the Spartan had killed a couple of their brothers and wanted revenge. The hunter named Fasu shot his plasma cannon at the Warthog and impacted it as it turned towards them. Both Marines and John were launched from the vehicle, and the Marines charged in, not realizing what they were fighting. John tried to tell them to fall back, but it was too late, and they were both in his line of fire, so he couldn't shoot it with his rocket. Both are killed before John is finally able to put the hunter down, but feels bad for the Marines and thinks that it's his fault that they died, since he could have told them about the hunters or something. Cortana tries to tell him that it's not his fault and there was nothing he could do, which refocuses him. He hears the other hunter roar, and John has no sympathy because he had only lost one brother. The Master Chief, to his knowledge, lost all of his. He makes his way to the entrance and kills the other hunter. Once inside, kills some more jackals and grunts and gets down to the bottom where he finds more hunters. Kills both with his rocket launcher and evades being charged at. John switched to his assault rifle and used his higher mobility to avoid the second hunter, not before getting hit by the spines, which cuts into his armor and cuts his arm. He finally gets an opening, fires the assault rifle into the back of the hunter, and kills it. He then kills a few more grunts and jackals before it all calms down. Cortana sees that most of John's vitals are dangerously elevated and had to sit back while John fought for both. Cortana thinks about saying something, but John speaks first. Time to finish the mission. He finds a safe place and does first aid on his arm first. Not due to pain, because he could block that out, but blood loss could cause a problem. He then starts making his way through, getting a hold of Fullhammer. Apparently a couple of dropships were on the way to the Marines on the beach. Cortana told them that they could try to hold out in the structure, but they didn't have enough time to try and get there and fortify it, so they would do their best to hold out. John and Cortana get through the structure and finally reach the room with a whole hollow panel that should activate the map. Once activated, Cortana scans it and finds the location of the control center. She tries to tell Keyes, but Fullhammer tells her that Keyes and his group fell out of contact a bit ago, probably because of the distance or comm issues. Cortana tells her to keep trying since they know where to go. Captain Keyes, Avery Johnson, and the rest of the Marines arrived at a location near the structure that they had apparently been looking for. They moved into the structure and on the way down found dead elites, but the bodies had been mangled, which they found odd, but further moved in anyways. Till they get to a door that's unable to be opened at first due to the Covenant working very hard to keep it shut, until the tech specialist is able to get it open. They move in and hear weird liquidy, slithery sounds. Mendoza, one of the Marines, said he had a bad feeling about this place, and John chews him out until hearing the other squad on comms having issues, but nothing coherent was coming through. Johnson told Mendoza to go see what the hell was going on, but Jenkins sees something in the room and asks what it is. At this point, a bunch of infection forms storm the room and attack the Marines. The Marines start going down, and Wallace A. Jenkins watches as Keyes is attacked and taken over by the little infectious bulbs. He tries to escape, but he is hit from behind and feels the tendrils insert into his body, and he feels something else start to take over. However, unlucky for him, the infection form was weak from hibernation. So even though it was able to take over his body, it wasn't able to completely dominate him. So Jenkins was able to see everything that happened and felt all the pain. A new type of hell that he had to live in. Keyes was in the same boat, but had zero control. He tries to scream, but nothing happens. And he had a hunger for something, but not sure what it was. But that this hunger was stronger than any type of hunger he had ever felt. It was a vacuum, and it consumed his entire being. Zuko Zamami is back on the Truth and Reconciliation at this point, and meeting with the Prophet again, thinking that he will probably see Rolemi again, but once inside he sees Rolemi's head detached from his body. The Prophet shows himself and states that what happened to Rolemi was due to his failures. He had let humans get into places they shouldn't have gotten into and was causing the Covenant to spread their troops more. Then tells Zamami that his fate will be the same unless he can come up with a plan to kill the armored human being, since he failed to kill him twice. Lucky for Zamami, he has the perfect plan and is able to convince the Prophet of his plan and is able to buy back his life for a time. The Master Chief makes it outside to a bridge that doesn't seem to be made for vehicles and has 2 levels to it. He fights off the Covenant along the bridge and gets inside the structure, and then outside again on the other side, working his way to Fire Team Zulu that needed some help. John gets there, flips the Warthog, and starts clearing out Covenant troops, eventually taking back the valley. They work their way further throughout more of the valleys until eventually getting to a drop-off where they had to ditch the Warthog. John gets to the other side of the valley to a pyramid that the control center was supposed to be inside of. He worked his way past more Covenant, and after getting to the top, seeing that the door was about to open, he runs back to his shade and mows down any Covenant soldiers that walk out, then moves past the terminal where Cortana is inserted and appears on the holopad, where she absorbs a whole lot of information, which has long-term effects with some short-term right off the bat. John asks if she's all good, which she states never better. When he tries to ask how the weapon works and what they need to do to use it, she calls him a barbarian and tells him that it's not a weapon. She studies some more, and when John is about to put her back in her place, she starts freaking out, stating that the Covenant should have known, and looks off to where Keyes might be. Panics and tells John he needs to get to Keyes and stop him from entering the structure, because there are no weapons, just something horrible that's buried. When John tries to ask what's buried, Cortana tells him that there's no time and he just needs to go. She will stay and see what more she can find out. I always hated that no time to explain in any kind of story. It would have taken literally 10 seconds to explain what is going on, and it would have been better for John to be briefed on what exactly he's about to walk into. But nah, let's just let him wing it and hope he survives. Keyes is floating in vacuum after being infected. His body, not his own, and he has no real control even of his thoughts. The other, which he has referred to the thing going through his mind, was replaying memories throughout Keyes' mind. Like he was looking for something. Keyes could sense everything in his memories like it was in them at the moment. And when they ended, they disappeared forever. The next one would start right up after that. Over and over, new memories were being sifted through. Keyes starts battling back and remembering his own name, which quickly realized it pissed off the other, quote unquote. So he would repeat his name and call sign over and over, figuring out that the other was trying to find Earth. So Keyes did everything he could to suppress any thoughts of Earth's location and how to find it. And unfortunately, he had to feed it memories. And for a time, that's what he did. Random memories from his first kiss to a girl, his taste of his favorite foods, all in an effort not to give the enemy what it wanted. And it turned out to be the hardest and most important battle of his life. John had just gotten dropped off by Echo 419 at the location in which Keyes and the Marines had been dropped off. Along the way, John had gone by a few crash sites and killed a couple of jackals, expecting more Covenant to be around, but there wasn't. Once to the structure, he goes inside and sees an elevator. On the way down, he sees enemies on his motion sensor, but it was just grunts and jackals that paid no mind to the elevator because they had heard it before. So John takes advantage and kills all with a grenade and a few bursts from his assault rifle. Beyond that point, he walks into a fear-crazed Marine that is aiming his M9 pistol back and forth randomly and eyes darting as well. John tries to calm him down, but he just keeps yelling back, stay back, you're not turning me into one of those things." The Master Chief tries to tell him that they're on the same side, but the pistol discharges and hits him in the chest. So he takes the pistol from him and sits him down, asking where Captain Keyes is. But he continues to yell, "Go find your own hiding place. The monsters are everywhere. God, I can still hear them. Just leave me alone." This guy has seen some shit, obviously. John asks if he's talking about the Covenant, but the man says no. and he can't get much more information out of him. So he returns the pistol and tells him to get back topside and wait for evac. But the man babbles a little and lays down in the fetal position. John has to help the higher number of soldiers, so he continues down. Further in, he finds more dead Marines and bullet casings everywhere, and he sees a Marine's helmet, Wallace A. Jenkins' helmet. So he takes the recording out and plugs it into a free port on his helmet and watches the feed. Seeing everything from the landing till they get inside, he hears Keyes and Johnson in the background, and then the second squad over the radio screaming, needing help. When Johnson tells Mendoza once again to go see what's going on, and Jenkins sees the infection forms coming out. John watches, and they get surrounded and attacked. Eventually, he sees Jenkins must have been hit from behind because he falls and the recording stops. At this point, he's thinking about scrubbing the mission and just getting out, but he decides he needs to push on. He has to find Keyes. Just then, hundreds of infection forms scatter out and move in on John. Firing his assault rifle back and forth with many quick bursts, he had finally seen for himself what the Marines had gotten themselves into, and what Cortana was horrified to see. Back at Alpha Base, Pelican Charlie 217 calls in requesting permission to land due to many injured on board needing immediate assistance. Nobody had heard from Charlie 217 since landing on Halo, so they called the AI Wellesley, and he hadn't heard from them either, and found it odd that they knew where Alpha Base was. They assumed probably through comms, which was possible. So he had them check for ID, which ended up checking out, and told them that they should take the base and put it on high alert just in case and allow them to land. In the Pelican, however, there were 30 camouflaged elites, ready to storm the base once landed, one of which being Zamami, who praised the pilot before killing him and letting the other elite take over for flying. They would try to take and hold all the landing pads for the 6 dropships that were on their way, with the reinforcements and a few others would head into the base looking for the armored human. Wellesley sees the dropships coming in and tries to make it so Charlie 217 can't land, but he was too late, and the elites were spreading out, killing as many as they could. In order to hold them back, Silva has a Marine pour gasoline on the landing pad so he could light it with a grenade to battle against the cloaked elites. Meanwhile, Zamami was in the base with some other elites looking for the Spartan, killing any humans they saw, and eventually they get to Yayep, who's in a cell. However, he only went for him so he could find the human. So Yayep says he's guarding the stolen Banshees, and they head up. Once at the top, they run into some Marines, and Zamami's weapon was recharging in the middle of combat, so he thought he was about to die. But Yayep saves him by throwing a plasma grenade at the humans, sticking on one and wiping them all out. They get to the Banshees, but they don't see any humans, so Zamami asks where he is. Yayep tells him he doesn't know, and Zamami asks why he lied to him. He tells Zamami that it was because he doesn't know how to fly one. Zamami does. He then threatens to kill Yayep for lying to him, but Yayep points the plasma pistol at his head and dares him to, which was ballsy for the grunt, but hey, do what you gotta do to survive. They head out on the Banshee and escape to live another day. Back up top, they are trying to push back the force of the landing pad, but Wellesley informed them of 5 more dropships on their way, since Wellesley destroyed one with the autocannon, and they were dropping up on the mesa. So McKay was tasked with taking her company and fighting them off. Fieldmaster Putami was on the battlefield again, ordering dropships to help strafe the humans while he and his army moved in. However, they were met with an unexpected scorpion shots that were catastrophic, and actually ends up being what kills the Fieldmaster, which in turn causes the rest of the attack to falter, since when other leads try to take over command, it doesn't work out as well. So at this point, the battle for Alpha Base was over, and the humans had won. And that will do it for the second part of Halo Flood in Halo Combat Evolved. Part 3 will be in the description below. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave any comments or questions down below, and I'll be happy to answer. Thanks for watching. Chick Chang out.